Let me tell you something. That night, Uyo was not normal at all. Rain was beating like it wanted to punish the earth. And somewhere on that lonely highway, a black SUV was just flying, like the driver was running from death itself. Inside that car was Victor James. Victor James, big man, real estate boss, man of power. But that night,
who are you? Why are you
power
following me?
meant nothing. He was bleeding, breathing like someone who had only minutes left. And in his hand, he was holding something very important. A sealed envelope. Not money, not land documents. Something worse. Something deeper. His hand was shaking like leaf in harmattan. And then he looked at it. Inside that envelope was written something very simple, but very dangerous. Do not trust Grace Williams. As he saw it, his eyes changed. Like something in his head just clicked. He whispered, very low, she cannot know. Hey, before anybody could understand what that meant, boom, silence. Victor fainted. And just like that, the envelope disappeared.
Hurry up, let us check the
before
wreckage.
police
Okay,
even arrived.
Look at that smoke.
This life, Sha. The sun rose brilliantly over Uyo. For months, the city had talked about only one thing: the Horizon Homes project. 10,000 affordable housing units. New roads, streetlights, schools, markets. An entire community built from scratch. Many people called it the most ambitious housing project in southern Nigeria. Today was the grand opening. Television stations arrived before sunrise. Journalists moved from one corner of the massive estate to another. Drone cameras hovered in the sky. Security officers stood at every gate. The atmosphere felt more like a national celebration than a business event. At the center of it all stood Grace Williams. At 38, she had become one of the most respected architects in Nigeria. 5 years earlier, nobody knew her name. Today, governors knew her. Investors respected her. Young professionals admired her. And thousands of families saw her as a symbol of hope. As she stepped onto the red carpet, camera flashes exploded around her. "Madam Grace, look this way. One more picture." She smiled. Confident, elegant, successful. Yet beneath her smile was exhaustion. She had not slept properly in days. This project meant everything to her. Everything. The crowd erupted as she climbed the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the woman behind this historic achievement. Applause rises. Grace stepped forward. For a moment, she simply looked at the sea of faces. She swallowed emotionally. This was the dream. She took a deep breath. Thank you. The crowd applauded again. When I was 12 years old, she continues.
Thank you. When I was 12 years old, my mother and I lived in a one-room apartment. I promised myself that one day I would help ordinary Nigerians own decent homes.
The audience rose to its feet. Standing ovation.
Grace smiled. But as she looked toward the VIP section, something bothered her. One chair was empty. Victor's chair. She frowned. Victor never arrived late. Never. Not for anything important. Not even once. Behind the stage, Daniel Scott adjusted his suit. Unlike Grace, Daniel loved attention. His smile could light up a room. A former teacher turned motivational speaker, he had become one of the most recognizable public figures in Nigeria. People listened whenever he spoke. He noticed Grace approaching. You should be celebrating. Grace forced a smile. Where's Victor? Daniel shrugged. No idea. You've called him? 5 times. No answer? No answer. Grace glanced at her wristwatch. That wasn't like Victor. Victor was the most disciplined among them, the most predictable, the most reliable. Daniel laughed. Maybe he finally found a woman. Grace rolled her eyes. Victor? Impossible. They both laughed. But the laughter faded quickly. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. 30 minutes earlier, along the Uyo-Ikotekpene highway, Victor James drove alone. The road stretched endlessly before him. Rain clouds gathered overhead. His phone buzzed again. He ignored it. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. The sealed envelope lay on the passenger seat. He glanced at it repeatedly, as if it were a bomb. Inside the envelope was information powerful enough to destroy lives. Information he had hidden for years. His breathing became heavier. The phone rang again. This time, an unknown number. Victor answered. Silence. Then, a voice. Cold. Calm. Dangerous. You should have destroyed it. Victor's face froze. His heartbeat accelerated. What do you want?
We warned you. Victor looked into his rearview mirror. A black SUV appeared behind him, following closely.
Who are you? Why are you
Too
following me?
closely. The voice continued. You had one job. Victor swallowed. You don't understand. No. The voice laughed softly. You are the one who doesn't understand. The call disconnected. Victor stared at the mirror. The SUV accelerated. Back at Horizon Homes, Daniel walked onto the stage. The audience cheered wildly. Daniel smiled confidently. Success is not about where you start. The crowd listened. It's about where you decide to go. Applause. 5 years ago, 3 friends sat around a plastic table with nothing but a dream. Laughter. We had no powerful connections. True, Grace shouted jokingly. The audience laughed. Daniel continued. We only had faith. More applause. But today, we stand as proof that determination can change destinies. The crowd erupted again. Yet, even while speaking, Daniel noticed Grace repeatedly checking her phone. Still no message from Victor. Rain exploded across the highway. Victor accelerated. The SUV accelerated too. His hands trembled. The envelope slid across the passenger seat. Victor grabbed it. The vehicle behind him moved closer. Then closer. Then bam! The SUV hit his car. Victor lost control. The steering wheel spun violently. The world became chaos. Screeching tires, breaking glass, metal twisting. The car slammed into a roadside barrier. Everything went black. Silence. The celebration continued. Music played. Champagne flowed. Investors networked. Suddenly, Daniel's phone rang. An unknown number. He answered casually. Seconds later, his face changed. The smile disappeared. His eyes widened. Grace noticed immediately. What happened? Daniel couldn't speak. The color drained from his face. Daniel couldn't speak. Still silence. Daniel! Finally, he whispered. It's Victor. Grace froze. What about Victor? There was an accident. The world seemed to stop. The music suddenly felt distant. The laughter vanished. Everything blurred.
What kind of accident? Daniel looked at her. His voice shook. Bad. 2 hours later, University Teaching Hospital.
Doctors rushed through corridors. Machines beeped continuously. Rain battered the windows. Grace and Daniel sat outside the intensive care unit.
Neither spoke. The silence felt unbearable. A doctor emerged. Family? Grace stood instantly. How is he? He's alive. Relief. Brief relief. But his condition remains critical. The doctor disappeared. Hours passed. Midnight arrived. Then something unexpected happened. Victor's heart monitor. The monitor changed rhythm. His fingers moved. His eyes opened slightly. A nurse rushed for help. Doctor! Grace and Daniel entered. Victor looked pale, weak, barely conscious. His lips moved. Grace leaned closer. Victor. His eyes found hers. Fear filled them. Raw fear. Not pain. Fear. As though he had seen something terrible. Victor. Grace whispered. What happened? His lips trembled. A single sentence escaped. She cannot know. Grace frowned. Who? Victor tried to speak again, but suddenly his eyes rolled back. The monitor accelerated. Doctors rushed forward. Everybody out. Grace and Daniel were pushed into the corridor. The door slammed shut. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Who was she? And what must she never know? At exactly 1:17 a.m., across town, Victor's apartment stood in darkness. The security guard slept in his chair. A shadow emerged from behind the building, dressed completely in black, face hidden. Gloves, cap, no identifiable features. The figure moved expertly, purposefully, like someone who had done this before. Within seconds, the apartment door opened. No alarm. No noise. The intruder entered. Straight to Victor's study. No hesitation. No searching. Whoever this person was knew exactly what they wanted. The drawer opened. Files disappeared into a black bag. One folder. Then another. Then another. Property records. Photographs. Old newspaper clippings.
handwritten note. The intruder collected everything. Then noticed something. A photograph. 3 children standing beside a burned building. The figure stared at it briefly, almost emotionally. Then took that too. Suddenly, a sound. Footsteps outside. The intruder froze. A neighbor approached the corridor. The figure remained perfectly still, holding breath, waiting. The footsteps passed. Silence returned. Moments later, the intruder vanished into the night. No fingerprints. No witnesses. No evidence. Only an empty apartment and a mystery that had just begun. As rain continued falling over Oyo, 3 questions silently emerged. Who was following Victor? Who stole the files? And what secret was so dangerous that a dying man feared Grace must never discover it?
The morning after, the rain had stopped, but the tension it brought remained. The sun rose slowly over Oyo, casting long shadows across the city. Inside the intensive care unit, machines continued their endless rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. Victor James remained unconscious. His face was pale. Bandages covered part of his forehead. The doctors still couldn't explain why he woke up only long enough to utter one strange sentence. She cannot know. Grace had not slept. Neither had Daniel. The mystery haunted them. Who was she? And what secret had Victor been trying so desperately to protect? Grace sat beside Victor's bed, looking at him, studying him, searching for answers in a face she had known for nearly 15 years. But all she found were more questions. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was the police.
I'm coming.
Miss Williams? Yes? We need to ask some questions about Mr. James. Grace stood immediately. I'm coming. An hour later,
We need forensics at the main
Grace stood outside Victor's apartment building. Police officers moved in and out. The security guard looked terrified. A detective approached her. Miss Williams? Yes? I'm Inspector Ibrahim. What happened? The inspector sighed. Someone broke into Mr. James's apartment last night. Grace froze. What? We believe it happened shortly after his accident.
Her heartbeat accelerated. What was stolen? The inspector looked uncomfortable. We don't know. Grace frowned. How can you not know?
There are no signs of a struggle. No fingerprints. No damaged locks. The intruder knew exactly where to go. A chill traveled through her body. This wasn't ordinary theft. Someone had been looking for something specific. Something important. Something connected to Victor. Victor's office was located on the top floor of Horizon Homes headquarters. The moment Grace entered, she felt uneasy. The room was unusually organized. Victor was naturally meticulous. Every file had its place. Every document had its label. But today, something felt wrong. Subtly wrong. A chair was slightly moved. A drawer was half open. A bookshelf looked disturbed. The office had been searched. Not by police. By someone looking for answers. The same answers Grace needed. Daniel entered behind her. You think whatever was stolen is connected to the accident? Connected to the accident? Grace nodded. I don't believe in coincidences. Daniel looked around. You think Victor was hiding something from us? Grace didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked toward Victor's desk. Slowly, carefully. Then she opened the bottom drawer. Empty. The next one? Empty. The third drawer? Nothing. Daniel folded his arms. Maybe the thief already took everything. Grace wasn't convinced. Victor always prepared for worst-case scenarios. If he was hiding something important, there had to be a backup. There always was. Hours passed. Employees came and went. Investigators searched. Nothing. By evening, Daniel was exhausted. This is pointless. Grace remained determined. No. Victor left something. How do you know? She looked around the office. Then her eyes stopped. On the bookshelf. One section seemed cleaner than the others. She walked toward it. Touched the wood. Knocked gently. Solid. Then, knock. Hollow. Grace's eyes widened. Daniel! What? Come here. Daniel approached. Grace pressed against the panel. Nothing happened. Then she noticed a tiny metal latch hidden beneath a shelf. Click. The wooden panel slid open. A secret compartment. Daniel's mouth fell open. No way! Inside sat a single brown envelope. Dust covered its surface, meaning it had been there for years. Grace picked it up carefully. Her hands trembled. What is it? I don't know. Slowly, she opened it. Inside was a photograph. Only one photograph. Nothing else. The image was old. very old. The edges had faded. The colors were almost gone. 3 children stood together in front of a small village house. A boy, a girl, another boy. They appeared happy, smiling, carefree, the type of smile only children possess. But the background told a different story. Behind them stood a burned building, blackened walls, destroyed roof, smoke stains, the remains of a fire. Daniel frowned. What village is this? Grace shook her head. I've never seen it before. Then she noticed something strange. One of the children's faces had been violently scratched out. Not faded, not damaged naturally, scratched deliberately, as though someone wanted that person erased. Daniel leaned closer. That's creepy. Grace turned the photograph over. The moment she did, her entire body stiffened. Written in faded ink were 6 words. The fire was not an accident. Silence. Neither spoke. Neither moved. The words seemed to grow heavier every second. Daniel finally broke the silence. What fire? Grace stared at the photograph. I don't know. What village? I don't know. Who are these children? I don't know. Daniel looked at her. For the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Victor had never spoken about any village, any fire, any childhood tragedy. Nothing. It was as though an entirely different life existed before the Victor they knew. And now, that hidden life was beginning to surface. That evening, someone stood across the street from Horizon Homes headquarters, watching, waiting. A black cap hid most of his face. Dark glasses concealed his eyes. In his hand was a phone. On the screen was a photograph. Grace, leaving the building, holding the old photograph. The stranger smiled, then made a call. A voice answered. Did she find it? Yes. Silence. Then the voice asked, what did she see? The photograph. Another pause. Longer this time. The voice became colder. Then we are running out of time. The call ended. The stranger continued watching Grace disappear into traffic. Night settled over the city. Grace finally arrived home. Exhausted, mentally drained. She placed the photograph on her dining table. The scratched face seemed to stare at her. The burned house, the strange message, the missing files, Victor's accident. Nothing made sense. She prepared coffee, determined to study the picture further. Then her phone vibrated. A text message. Unknown number. She opened it. The message contained only 5 words. Stop searching or someone dies. Her blood ran cold. She read it again and again. The message felt unreal, like something from a movie. Yet here it was, on her screen. Real, personal, threatening. She immediately deleted it, then laughed nervously. Some idiot trying to scare me. But even as she said it, she didn't believe herself. The timing was too perfect. Someone knew she had found the photograph. Someone was watching. Scene 8, the second message. 10 minutes later, her phone vibrated again. Another message.
Same unknown number. Grace frowned, opened it. The moment she saw the image, her coffee cup slipped from her hand. Crash! Coffee spilled across the floor. Her breathing stopped. The photograph attached to the message was recent. Very recent. Taken earlier that day. Her mother, Ruth Williams, standing outside a pharmacy, completely unaware she was being photographed. The picture had clearly been taken secretly, from a distance. Like surveillance. Beneath the image were 6 terrifying words.
Your mother is easier to find. Grace felt the room spinning. Fear exploded inside her chest. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't random. Someone was watching her. Watching her family. Watching everything. And whoever sent the message knew exactly how to hurt her. Her hands shook as she immediately called her mother. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. No answer. Her panic intensified. She called again. Still nothing. A 3rd time. No answer. Suddenly, every second felt dangerous. Every minute felt deadly. Grace grabbed her keys, ran outside, jumped into her car. The engine roared to life. As she sped through the streets of Oyo, her mind raced. Who sent the message? Who took the photograph? Why was her mother involved? And what did any of this have to do with Victor? Traffic lights blurred. Street lights flashed past. Her phone rang. It was Daniel. Grace? She sounded breathless. Someone's watching us. What? They sent me a picture. What picture? My mother. Silence. Then Daniel whispered, "Oh God, what do we do?" Daniel's voice became serious. "Get to your mother first. Then call me." Grace pressed harder on the accelerator. The road stretched endlessly before her. Unknown to her, a black SUV emerged from a nearby street and began following her. 20 minutes later, Grace arrived at her mother's house. The gate was open. Her heart The gate was never left open. Never. Slowly, she stepped out of the car. The compound was silent. No television, no radio, no movement. Only darkness. Mom? No answer. She entered the house. The front door creaked open. The living room was empty. A chair had been knocked over. Grace's pulse thundered. Mom! Still nothing.
Then she noticed something. An envelope placed carefully on the dining table, addressed to her. Only her. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Inside was another photograph.
The same 3 children. The same burned house. But this time, there was a message written beneath it. You are closer to the truth than Victor ever was. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the back of the house. Thud! Grace spun around, frozen. The next morning, Uyo woke up under a blanket of grey clouds. The city moved as usual. Cars filled the roads, traders opened their shops, school children hurried through the streets. But inside her office at the Daily Truth newspaper, Peace Scott couldn't focus. The photograph lay on her desk. 3 children, 1 burned house, 1 scratched out face, and a message. The fire was not an accident. She had spent most of the night studying it. Every detail, every shadow, every face. Something about the picture disturbed her. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it didn't show. Someone had deliberately removed a piece of the story. And journalists hated missing pieces. Peace leaned back in her chair. Her phone vibrated. Daniel. Hello? Peace. His voice sounded tired. Very tired. You've been investigating Victor's past. Yes. Find something? Not yet. A long silence followed. Then Daniel spoke softly. Grace received another threat. Peace sat upright. What kind of threat? They sent pictures of her mother. Peace's expression changed immediately. That was no longer intimidation. That was surveillance. And surveillance meant organization, planning, resources. Whoever was behind this wasn't an ordinary criminal. They were protecting something. Something big. Very big. Peace grabbed her notebook. I'm going deeper. Be careful. Peace looked at Victor's photograph. That's exactly what worries me. 3 hours later, Peace sat inside a dusty government records office. Stacks of old files surrounded her. The air smelled of paper and neglect. An elderly clerk adjusted his glasses. "You said you're looking for a village?" Peace showed him the photograph. "Have you seen this place before?" The old man examined it carefully for nearly a minute. Then his eyes narrowed. "I know this building." Peace immediately leaned forward. "You do?" "Maybe." "Where?" The old man scratched his head. "Not Uyo. Not Ikotekpini. Not Eket." He stared again. Then suddenly snapped his fingers. "Abandoned village." Peace's pulse quickened. "What village?" "Old Creek." "Old Creek?" The man nodded. "Most people don't even remember it existed." "Where is it?" The old man pointed at a faded map. "Deep within a forgotten rural area. Far from the highways. Far from development. Far from attention. Exactly the type of place where secrets survived." The road became worse the farther Peace traveled. Paved roads disappeared. Then street lights disappeared. Then mobile network signals weakened. Soon only thick forests remained. The atmosphere felt strange, oppressive, as if the village itself was trying to remain hidden. Peace drove slowly. The photograph rested on the passenger seat. The deeper she went, the more uncomfortable she became. Victor had never spoken about this place. Not once. Not in all the years she had known him. Why? A journalist's instincts whispered something dangerous. Because somebody wanted it forgotten. By afternoon, Peace arrived. Old Creek wasn't really a village anymore. It looked like a ghost. Half-collapsed houses, overgrown pathways, rusting zinc roofs, broken walls.
Silence. An unnatural silence. No children playing. No loud music. No motorcycles. Nothing. A few elderly residents sat beneath trees, watching.
Not welcoming, not hostile, just watching. The way people watch strangers who ask questions. Peace approached carefully. "Good afternoon." Nobody responded immediately. She showed them the photograph. "Do any of you know this place?" An old man looked once and turned away. Another woman stood up and walked inside her house. A third person shook his head, yet Peace noticed something. Fear. They recognized it. They simply didn't. "I don't want to discuss it."
a small house at the edge of the village.
Unlike the others, somebody still lived there. Smoke rose gently from a kitchen behind it. She approached. An elderly woman sat outside. Her face carried the weight of many years. Peace smiled politely.
Good evening, Mama. The woman nodded. Peace showed her the photograph. The reaction was immediate. The old woman's hands began shaking. Her breathing changed. Then tears rolled down her cheeks. Peace froze. The woman stared at Victor's face, not blinking, not speaking, simply crying. Deep, painful tears, the kind people cry when old wounds reopen. Peace lowered her voice. Mama? The woman whispered. He came back. Peace frowned. Who came back? The old woman looked around nervously, as if someone might be listening. Then she pointed at Victor's photograph. The boy who survived. Peace's heart nearly stopped. The boy who survived what? The woman swallowed. Her eyes filled with terror. The fire. A cold chill moved through Peace's body. What fire? The night they burned everything. Peace quickly opened her notebook. Who burned it? The woman looked terrified. They said nobody must talk. Who said that? The woman stared at her for several seconds, then whispered, "They are still watching." Peace leaned closer. Mama, please. What happened that night? The woman wiped her tears. The children were sleeping. Then the fire started. People screamed. Houses burnt. Some escaped. Many didn't. Peace's pulse raced. Victor survived? The woman nodded. One child survived. Peace looked at the photograph again. Victor? The old woman opened her mouth to answer. Then, a loud motorcycle engine exploded nearby. Vroom. Both women turned. A motorcycle sped toward the house. Fast. Too fast. The rider wore a helmet. Dark clothes. No visible face. The old woman's expression changed instantly. Pure fear. Not concern. Not surprise. Fear. The kind of fear created by old memories. She grabbed Peace's wrist. You must leave. What? You must leave now. Mama, who is that? The woman stood abruptly. Go. But go. The urgency shocked Peace. The motorcycle stopped near the compound. The rider remained seated, watching, motionless, waiting. Peace looked between the rider. The moment Peace turned to look at the motorcycle again, the rider accelerated away. The moment Peace turned to look at the motorcycle again, the rider accelerated away. But the woman was gone too. Completely gone. The chair remained. The house remained. But the woman had disappeared. Peace blinked. What? She rushed around the compound. Nobody. She checked behind the building. Nothing. She entered the house. Empty. No sign of anyone. No photographs. No clothes. No food. Nothing. As though nobody had ever lived there. Peace's heartbeat thundered. This made no sense. A 70-year-old woman couldn't simply vanish. Not that quickly. Not without help. Not without preparation. Unless she had been expecting this. The drive back felt longer, darker, more dangerous. Every vehicle behind her looked suspicious. Every sound felt threatening. By the time she returned the following morning, she had convinced herself she needed answers. Real answers. Not stories. Not rumors. Evidence. She returned directly to the house. But her blood froze immediately. The house was gone. Not physically destroyed. Simply abandoned. Windows boarded. Doors locked. Dust everywhere. No signs of recent activity. Nothing. Peace knocked on a neighboring door. An elderly man answered. "Good morning." She pointed toward the house. "The woman who lives there." "That house has been empty since my grandson was small." Another neighbor confirmed the same thing. Then another. Nobody knew the woman. Nobody had seen the woman. Nobody remembered the woman. According to everyone in the village, she never existed. Shaken, Peace returned to her car. She sat silently, trying to make sense of everything. Then, something caught her attention. A folded piece of paper beneath her windshield wiper. She frowned. Slowly, she picked it up. Opened it. Only one sentence was was written in faded handwriting. Ask Ruth Williams about the fire. Peace stared at the note. Her heart pounded. Ruth Williams. Grace's mother. The same woman who had recently been photographed by the anonymous stalker. The same woman receiving unwanted attention. The same woman somehow connected to Victor's hidden past. Peace looked around. The road was empty. The village was silent. Who left the note? The mysterious woman? The motorcyclist? Or someone else entirely? Then her phone rang for 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then a distorted voice whispered, "You should have stayed away." The call disconnected. Peace sat frozen. The mystery had just become personal. And somewhere far away, someone knew exactly where she had been. The storm returned 3 days later. Dark clouds swallowed the sky above Uyo. Rain tapped against the hospital windows like impatient fingers. Inside the intensive care unit, Victor James slowly opened his eyes. For a moment, he stared at the ceiling, confused, disoriented. Then memory returned. The highway. The black SUV. The phone call. The envelope. The crash. Victor's breathing became uneven. Fear immediately appeared in his eyes. Not fear of death. Fear of something worse. Someone. A nurse noticed him moving. "Doctor!" Grace and Daniel rushed into the room. Relief flooded their faces. For days they had feared the worst. Now Victor was finally awake. "Victor!" Grace almost hugged him, but stopped when she noticed his expression. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He looked terrified. Daniel forced a smile. "You nearly gave us heart attacks." Victor didn't smile back. Instead, he looked toward the windows, then toward the hallway, then toward the security camera in the corner. His behavior unsettled everyone. Grace sat beside him. "Victor." No response. She placed refusing to see the photograph. Grace spoke softly. "We found this." Silence. "Who are those children?" No answer. "What fire?" Nothing. "Victor, what happened in that village?" Victor shut his eyes, as though trying to escape the questions. Daniel became frustrated. "Talk to us,"
Still silence. Grace leaned forward. Someone threatened my mother. Victor's eyes snapped open. Fear exploded across his face. The reaction lasted only a second, but it was enough. Grace saw it. Daniel saw it. Victor knew something. Something dangerous. Something connected to her mother. Yet he refused to speak. That night, the hospital grew quiet. Doctors changed shifts. Only a few nurses moved between rooms. Room 307 remained under observation. Victor hadn't slept. Every sound made him nervous. Every footstep made him look up. He felt hunted. At exactly 11:42 p.m., a nurse entered the room. Female. Face mask. Hospital uniform. Late 20s. Victor glanced at her briefly, then looked away. The nurse closed the door. Slowly. Too slowly. Something felt strange. Victor frowned. The nurse walked toward his bed. Not toward the medical equipment. Not toward the chart. Toward him. Directly toward him. Victor's heartbeat accelerated. The nurse smiled. But the smile never reached her eyes. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a syringe. Victor froze. The liquid inside was dark, almost black. Immediately he knew. This wasn't medication. The nurse whispered, "I'm sorry." Victor's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" The nurse didn't answer. Instead, she moved closer. Faster. Victor suddenly screamed, "Help!" The syringe lunged toward his arm. Victor grabbed the attacker's wrist. Pain exploded through his injured body. The nurse struggled violently. "Let go!" Victor screamed again. "Help!" The attacker shoved him backward. The heart monitor exploded into frantic beeping. Beep, beep, beep. Outside, security officers heard the commotion. Footsteps thundered toward the room. The attacker panicked, then did something unexpected. She dropped the syringe, opened the emergency exit, and jumped into the stairwell. The door slammed shut. Seconds later, security burst into the room. Victor pointed desperately. "She tried to kill me!" The guards rushed after her. But by the time they reached the stairwell, nobody was there. The hospital became chaos. Police arrived, security guards searched every floor. Doctors questioned Victor. Everyone wanted answers.
Inspector Ibrahim arrived shortly after midnight. He immediately requested the CCTV recordings.
Simple, straightforward, routine. Except the footage was gone.
Inside the hospital may have helped. This wasn't random.
The attack had been planned. The following morning, Victor sat alone, watching the door, watching the windows, watching everyone. The attack changed him. Before, he was secretive. Now, he was terrified. Every person became a suspect. Every face became a threat. The doctor entered. Victor flinched. A cleaner entered. Victor watched carefully. A nurse entered. Victor demanded identification. Fear had consumed him. And Grace noticed. When she entered the room later, she found him staring at the photographic
Again. This time, he wasn't avoiding it. He looked haunted by it, like a man staring at
A ghost. Grace sat quietly. Victor. Nothing. You almost died. Silence. Somebody tried to kill you. Nothing. Whatever you're hiding is dangerous. Victor lowered his head. For several moments he said nothing. Then quietly whispered, I know. Grace froze. It was the first genuine response he had given. Then tell me. Victor looked at her. His eyes were filled with regret. Not fear. Regret. The deep kind. The kind that follows years of bad decisions. We should never have built it. Grace frowned. Built what? Victor immediately went silent again. The walls came back up. The conversation ended. That evening, Daniel arrived alone. Grace had gone home. Police had left. The room was quiet. Only the sound of rain touched the windows. Daniel sat beside Victor. Neither spoke for several minutes. Old friends. Bound by years of struggle. Years of sacrifice. Years of success. Finally, Daniel sighed. I almost lost you. Victor stared ahead. I know. Daniel laughed nervously. You know what's funny? No. I've spent 3 days defending you. Victor looked at him. What do you mean? I keep telling Grace you're not hiding anything. Victor lowered his eyes. The guilt was obvious. Daniel noticed immediately, and suddenly his stomach tightened. Victor. Silence. You're hiding something. Victor didn't deny it. That frightened Daniel more than any answer. Victor. The room became quiet. Then Victor finally spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically, almost like a confession. We built our future on a lie. Daniel blinked. What? Victor looked toward the rain. His voice trembled. We built everything on a lie. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Dangerous. Impossible. Daniel laughed nervously. What are you talking about? No answer. The company? Silence. The housing project? Nothing. Daniel stood up, now angry. What lie? Victor swallowed. His eyes filled with emotion. For the first time in years, he looked broken. Completely broken. We should have asked more questions. Daniel's heartbeat accelerated. What questions? Victor looked at him, then shook his head. No. What do you mean no? I can't. Daniel stepped closer. Victor, people are trying to kill you. I know. They threatened Grace. I know. They are watching us. Victor closed his eyes. I know. Daniel's frustration exploded. Then tell me what is going on. The room fell silent. Victor opened his eyes and whispered the most terrifying thing Daniel had ever heard. If I tell you, his voice cracked, they'll come for all of us. Later that night, long after Daniel left, Victor reached beneath his mattress. Hidden there was a folded document, one of the few papers the thief never found. His hands trembled as he opened it. The title at the top read, Confidential Land Transfer Agreement. Beneath it was several signatures. One signature belonged to a man named Michael Peters. Another signature belonged to someone Victor knew very well. Someone nobody would ever suspect. Victor stared at the document. His eyes filled with dread. The agreement was the reason people were dying. The reason the village burned. The reason somebody wanted him silenced. The reason Grace's mother was being watched. Suddenly, a shadow moved outside his hospital. The door. Victor froze. The shadow remained there, motionless, watching. His breathing became frantic. The nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning. And somewhere in the darkness, someone knew Victor was still alive.
The rain had finally stopped falling over Uyo, but the clouds still hung low, as if refusing to leave. Inside a dimly lit office at the Federal Criminal Investigation Department, a man sat alone, surrounded by dusty case files. Samuel Johnson, retired investigator, 61 years old. Once feared for his precision, now forgotten by the system. He stared at a file marked Unsolved Case, Old Creek Fire, 1997. For years he had tried to forget it, but some cases never truly disappear. They only wait. Samuel opened the file slowly. Inside were yellow documents, statements, burn reports, witness notes, and a single blurred photograph of a burned settlement. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped the pages. Then he stopped. A name, typed in bold letters. Child, Emmanuel Johnson. Samuel frowned. He had seen that name before. Not in this file. Not in his career. But somewhere else. Somewhere more recent. He reached for a second folder beside him. The Victor James investigation file. He opened it and froze. There it was again. The same name. Emmanuel Johnson. Samuel leaned back slowly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. 2 cases, separated by 28 years. Same name, same village, same fire. Samuel closed his eyes. The past came back like smoke. Old Creek Village. A fire so large it could be seen from miles away. He remembered arriving at the scene. Burned bodies. Collapsed homes. Children crying. And chaos everywhere. But one thing stood out. A missing child. A boy. Unaccounted for. No body ever recovered. Official report? Deceased. But Samuel never believed it. Because something didn't feel right. No remains, no confirmation, no closure, just silence. Now, decades later, that same case was knocking on his door again. Only this time, it had a new connection. Victor James. Samuel drove through the rain-soaked streets of Uyo that evening. The case file sat on the passenger seat. He replayed everything in his mind. Victor James. The hospital attack. The hidden agreement. The burned village photograph. The scratched-out child. Everything was connected. But how? He parked outside a small hospital where Victor was still admitted under police protection.
2 armed officers stood outside his room. Samuel showed his identification. They let him pass. Inside, Victor lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He looked weaker than before, but his eyes were alert. Aware, Samuel approached slowly. Victor James. Victor turned his head slightly. "I need to ask you something." Victor said nothing. Samuel placed the photograph of Old Creek on the bed. The moment Victor saw it, his breathing changed. Subtle, but visible. His fingers tightened. Samuel noticed. "You recognize it?" Still no answer. Samuel leaned forward. "This village, this fire, it connects to you." Victor finally whispered, "Don't go there." Samuel frowned. "Why?" Victor turned his head away. His voice cracked slightly. "Because some things were never meant to be remembered." Outside the hospital corridor, Grace arrived with Daniel. Her face was pale. She had not slept properly in days. Everything was collapsing. Her mother's disappearance, the threats, Victor's silence. Now this investigator asking questions. She stepped into the room. "Who are you?" Samuel stood. "Samuel Johnson, former investigator." Daniel frowned. "What do you want?" Samuel looked at Grace. "I think your partner is connected to an old case." Grace stiffened. "What case?" Samuel held up the file. "Old Creek Fire." Grace froze. That name again. The same name from the photograph. Samuel continued. "A child disappeared that night. No body was ever found. And I believe that child is still alive." Silence filled the room. Grace slowly turned toward Victor. Her voice shook. "Victor, what is he talking about?" Victor said nothing, but his silence was louder than any answer. Samuel opened the file again. He pointed to the name, Emmanuel Johnson. Grace frowned. "What about it?" Samuel looked at her carefully. "This is the missing child." Daniel laughed nervously. "That's impossible." Samuel shook his head. "It's not impossible. It's just hidden." He turned the file towards Grace. "And here's the strange part. This name appears again in your partner's documents." Grace stepped closer. Her heartbeat slowed. The world felt unstable. "What documents?" Samuel hesitated, then said, "The secret agreement Victor signed." Grace felt a chill. Samuel continued, "And in those documents, the same name appears under an alternate identity record." Daniel frowned. "What are you saying exactly?" Samuel looked at all of them. I'm saying the missing child didn't just survive the fire. He paused. He was taken. Silence. Then he added the final words and raised under a new identity. Grace stepped back slowly. No. Samuel nodded. Yes. Daniel shook his head. This is insane. But Grace wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was racing. If Emmanuel Johnson was real, if the child survived, then who was Victor James? Or worse, who was she trusting all these years? Victor finally spoke again, barely audible. You don't understand what you are digging into. Samuel leaned closer. Then explain it. Victor shook his head. His voice broke slightly. If you knew, you wouldn't sleep again. Grace stepped forward. I deserve the truth. Victor looked at her. For the first time, real sadness appeared in his eyes. I tried to bury it, but it keeps coming back. Samuel pressed. The fire wasn't an accident, was it? Victor closed his eyes. A long silence followed. Then finally, no. The room went still. Daniel whispered, "Then what was it?" Victor opened his eyes and said the words that changed everything. A cover-up. Grace staggered slightly. A cover-up for what? Victor looked at her. His voice dropped. For something much bigger than all of us. Samuel stepped back slowly. This is no longer just a missing child case. He pointed at Victor. This is identity manipulation. He turned to Grace. And you are standing in the middle of it. Grace's breathing quickened. What are you trying to say? Samuel answered carefully. Someone erased a child's identity, rebuilt lives around that lie, and protected it for nearly 3 decades. Daniel shook his head. That's impossible. Samuel turned to him. Then explain why someone tried to kill Victor twice already. Silence. No answer. Only tension. Only fear. As Samuel gathered his files to leave, Victor suddenly grabbed his wrist. Weakly, but urgently. Stop. Samuel looked at him. Victor's eyes were intense. Leave this alone. Samuel frowned. Why? Victor whispered. Because if you find the truth, he paused, you won't just lose the case. His grip tightened slightly. You will lose your life. Samuel stared at him, then slowly pulled his hand away. I've heard threats before. Victor shook his head. This isn't a threat. It's a promise. A cold silence filled the room. Samuel left without another word. But as he walked away, he already knew. This case was no longer about a missing child. It was about something far more dangerous. Something buried beneath years of lies. And someone powerful enough to kill, to keep it buried. Back inside the room, Grace sat beside Victor. Her voice was barely audible. Tell me the truth. Victor looked at her. Long silence. Then finally he whispered, "The missing child." Grace leaned closer. "Is not the only one." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Victor's next words broke everything she believed. There were more than one child in that fire. Grace froze. Victor continued, "And not all of them died." The implication hung in the air like a shadow. Down, Daniel stepped back slowly. Samuel's words echoed in Grace's mind. Identity erased. Lives rebuilt. Truth buried. And now, everything was collapsing into one terrifying question. If Victor wasn't the only survivor, then who else was still out there? And why were they coming back now